What's the worst thing you've come home to? I came home from a business trip with 3/4 of the furniture at my house gone. My wife of 20 plus years had left me for her high school sweetheart and moved across the country to be with him. She took everything she wanted and left me with divorce papers. Hard to imagine a 5,000 square featuring house with nothing in it. Depressing for sure. I am so sorry for this. It is sad to spend so much time with someone and then leaves you. And in this way, with no respect. I wish you the best. Got home after work, sat down on my couch, caught a glimpse of something in the corner of my eye, turned towards the love seat and see a squirrel sitting on top of it, then look behind the love seat and see that my air conditioner side paneling was torn to shreds and all over the floor. Chased the squirrel out and made better side paneling. But the squirrels never stopped trying to get in. It was horrible hearing them scratching and gnawing. My landlord tried putting up some wire fencing around the window hoping to prevent them from getting in. Instead, they would manage to get in and then forget how to get out. So they would be trapped between the wiring and my AC, panicking and gnawing in the windowsill, and I'd feel bad for them and despise them at the same time. This went on for a long time and I now freaking hate squirrels and window AC units. My friends printed and framed a particularly good photo of one of those squirrels attempting to get in and bought me a squirrel throw pillow. I go to turn on the light and nothing. The electricity is off. Go to the electricity box outside and turn it on and go back inside. House has been cleared out of all valuable things. I hear a whirring sound and realize it's the old VCR videotape rewinder rewinding the videotape I put in it in the morning as I left home with my baby son. And then it dawns on me, that tape only takes about 3 minutes to rewind. The burglars must have turned off the electricity seconds after I left home with my baby in the morning. They were watching me leave from inside the garden. That is disturbing. I was 13 and came home from school. My mother was walking around the house naked and delirious, randomly picking objects up and dropping them, calling me by a name that wasn't mine. I called 911 and a neighbor. She had a fever of 104. It was bacterial meningitis. She was in a medically induced coma after that, required brain surgery and then months of antibiotics. She had amnesia after that and was never really the same. Bacterial meningitis is literally the worst. I had it this past summer and was only in the hospital for a month. I'm sorry that happened to your mom. One day I came home and all of my mother's stuff was gone, along with my mother. She moved out without telling anyone but my dad. Pretty crappy. Lab bust. I was raised by my grandparents. They were wonderful people who adopted a bunch of crappy kids, and they'd let my aunt and her boyfriend move their RV onto the property because they got kicked out of wherever they were staying. The worthless buttholes were trying to cook in it and it caught on fire, so they ran off and left it there burning. The neighbors called 911 and the fire department got the fire out before it got to the house. It was nice coming home from school to that. It was a huge crap storm. My grandparents were almost arrested and they almost lost their house and land. Pretty much the only thing that saved them was that the lab was in a vehicle registered to the boyfriend. Even though we didn't get into any legal trouble, it was still a pain in the butt because the whole house had to be tested and they had to hire someone to clean up the mess and have the property test clean before we could move back in. And my childhood home is listed as a former lab on the National Clandestine Laboratory Register. My grandparents never recovered financially. So sad to hear of kind souls like your grandparents getting completely taken advantage of. I left home one morning and noticed a handful of fruit flies buzzing around the kitchen. Thought nothing of it, figured I'd buy some traps later. Came home to hundreds of them, everywhere, along the walls and ceilings in every room. Literally ran down the street to a Rite Aid and bought all the bug spray and traps they had. If it ever happens again, at first sight of fruit flies, leave out a cup of apple cider vinegar with a drop of dish soap in it. The suckers will drown themselves in it. Dog had surgery on both paws. Husband decided after a few days that he trusted him without the cone of shame. Arrived home to find bits of white cotton scattered down the hall. Followed them to find the living room floor covered in blood and the dog in his bed with a paw swollen to twice its usual size after he'd shredded the bandages and ripped out his stitches. Worst treasure hunt ever. My family had 2 sister dogs, white lab retriever mixes. One of them had surgery on her leg and Well, someone took her cone off and well, out came the staples. Get them fixed. And wouldn't you know it, Ginger ripped the fricking staples out again. I took her to the vet that day and said, I'm not sure we are smart enough to own pets. The cone didn't come off again. I came home to find my mother had died overnight with a glass of milk I'd poured out for her the night before still sitting there. Worst fear, my mom has cardiomyopathy and it's common that people with it die in their sleep. Sometimes I check on her. 8 billion baby praying mantis in my house. Over the fall, my daughter went out into the woods and collected every praying mantis cocoon she could find and put them in a shoebox in her bedroom. They all hatched in the early spring while we were visiting my parents for the day. I used to work at a Christmas tree lot and mantises use these to lay eggs, so you can find them quite a bit. Well, someone would pay us for them and would raise them and whatnot, so we collected them. Well, one year we forgot about all the mantis sacks we had stowed in the trailer. It was absolutely covered. When I was around 7, I came home from a family weekend away. I walked into my room towards my cove. I had this hanging chain that you put your beanie babies on. As I passed it, it seemed like there was a bunch of dust particles in the air around me. I started moving my hands in front of my face as if to push the dust particles from blocking my view. That was when I realized these were not dust particles, but rather hundreds upon hundreds of tiny baby spiders. While we were gone, tons of eggs hatched and I was walking in all of them hanging from the ceiling on web strings. I immediately ran screaming into the shower and refused to go back in for days after my dad killed them all. That was the end of me having beanie babies. Time to grow up. TLDR. Hundreds of spiders hatched from eggs. I walked into them all over me. This happened to me too. I was sitting in my room on the computer when I noticed something like a dust particle in my face, but it wasn't moving like one. I focused on it, realized the truth, and saw that hundreds, maybe thousands of baby spiders were dangling all over my room. Took me hours with the vacuum to get them all. My dad had cancer and we were taking care of him for almost a year. I went away to my cousin's birthday party for the weekend and came back to him almost dead. I appreciate that my mom didn't want to ruin my weekend, but I never would have forgiven myself if I missed his passing. Seeing my next door neighbor's lifeless, bloody, almost unrecognizable body on the street I lived on because a drunk driver ran him over at 80 miles per hour on a 20 mile per hour limit street. Oh my god. My GF and I were having a problem. I told her I needed to take a walk, but I'd be back. I kissed her on the cheek and walked out the door. I got back and she had cleaned up, packed her things, and left me. My dad, sitting at the foot of his bed, in tears, with a shotgun in his hand. I am so glad I got home when I did. I was out with friends and something was telling me I needed to get home ASAP, so I left early. I took the shotgun out of his hand, put the safety on, and just gave him a huge hug. On a lighter note, the first mess I came home to in my first home was my cat finding the canister of catnip and exploding it all over the living room. I mean, it was all over the place, and the cat, looking smug as a bug, was rolling around in it, high as a kite. Once my family returned from dinner out, a few hours at least, and upon entry back into the house we noticed water leaking from the garage roof. Turns out our top floor toilet tank had cracked and water had been continuously pouring and was cascading down the stairs, through all 3 floors. A ridiculous amount of damage. That's a lot of damage. Flex tape. My clothes thrown out and my game system CDS broken or pawned for money just because I told my stepdad no to getting a loan out so he could buy beer. Luckily he is out of my life now. Not necessarily something I came home to, but happened right as I came home. I had a really long day at work and when I got home, the parking spot I usually used was taken, so I had to park across the street. I walked inside and crashed down on the couch, exhausted, ready to relax when I heard a smash outside. I had a sinking feeling and just thought to myself, dang it, someone just hit my parked car. I looked out the window and sure enough someone had slammed into the back of my car causing thousands of dollars of damage and then drove off. I had just gotten my car back from the shop after being hit 2 weeks before. One January I was chilling on the couch with my husband. It's like 2 AM. A cop comes to the door and lets us know that someone has taken a chisel to every window on the driver's side of my car. The inside isn't touched, they just went nuts on the windows. 1 year later, same thing. No clue who did it or why. Came home to blood trails all over the house. My cat got hurt for some reason I still don't know till today. It was a long cut on one of her hind legs. Brought her to the vet, stitched her up and she's good now. But I've made sure to check for any and all sharp objects around the house. Similar happened to mine, though it wasn't as severe and she didn't need stitches. But one of my cats wandered into the bathroom while I was at work and decided my new razor was a toy. Cue coming home to bloody paw prints and me frantically confirming that the offending cat wasn't going to die before cleaning it up. Thankfully she learned never to do that again. When I was in about 6th grade or so, my family and I adopted a dog, Sally. We had found abandoned with her pups. We found the pups a home and decided to keep Sally. Little did we know the mom had separation anxiety. Before I left for the school bus one morning after my parents had gone to work, I was to put Sally in her kennel, but she absolutely refused to get in. Knowing I was already running late, I just gave up and left. When I came home that afternoon, it was pure destruction. The blinds had been destroyed. She had scattered all my things on my desk on the floor, including a small fish tank, and the house had a myriad of broken objects throughout. Let's just say my parents weren't too thrilled, but I managed to persuade them to keep her. To this day she was one of my absolute favorite dogs. Who would have thought? My house has been broken into. I got home, and there were 2 police cars in the driveway. A neighbor reported it. The house was trashed. I have no idea why. I'm not material and don't keep much on hand. The guy got away, and I cleaned up. Not a good day. This is such a terrible feeling, and you feel so violated beyond the stuff that was taken. Knowing a stranger was in your home, going through your stuff, the worst. My brothers, 20 and 22, and I, 20M, came home from college for winter break. The next day my mom wakes me up asking if I planned on going with the rest of the family to put my childhood dog, 13F, down. She had told everyone weeks before that this was going to happen when we got home for break, but forgot to tell me. A robbery. It was during a summer heat wave with high heat and humidity. I came home to an apartment where several things felt off. I took a pee, removed my tie and sweat-drenched dress shirt before noticing a wide open window. I proceeded to take an inventory and called the police. Thankfully I had renter's insurance and they missed my laptop. My best friend and I came back from a night out to my dorm room and found the door wide open, a bloody blanket on the floor and an empty room. Turned out that my roommate had drunkenly fallen off her lofted bed, cut her shin down to the bone on a piece of metal on the bed, and was so disoriented that she went into a different unlocked dorm room and fell asleep on that person's bed. Best friend puked in the water fountain after seeing the blood. Ended up eating our post-night out Taco Bell cold in a waiting room while my roommate got stitches. A very memorable night. An old dog of mine had become sick after getting a hold of a large batch of double fudge brownies at some point during the day, and by the time I got home, I walked into a house with no less than 25 separate puddles. Yes, puddles of crap. Poor fella had to eat bland boiled chicken and rice for a week. Thousands of ladybugs that hatched were swarming around and on the white siding of the house, and then I went inside and a couple hundred were hanging out in my living room on the ceiling. Muddy puppy paw prints everywhere. Oh wait, that's not mud. Dear God. My kitten did this but all over our bed. I came out from work on a heavy rain day in late autumn to find my new used car flooded. The sunroof didn't seal properly and leaked a lot. At first I didn't notice because I had parked facing downward on a hill. I started up the car, pulled out, and, upon hitting level ground, a 4-inch wave of icy cold water sloshed over my feet from under the dash. I couldn't get my head around it, just couldn't grasp what was happening. Stopping in the middle of traffic, I just sat there staring down at the wading pool on the floor of my new used car. After a few moments someone honked, so I drove home. Yes, I knew I should go directly to the dealership or a repair shop, or somewhere other than my own garage. But I didn't. I drove across town with water sloshing back and forth around my feet like on a sinking ship. I remember laughing out loud at one point, thinking, maybe I can dry it out with the leaf blower. In the end, I sucked it out with the shop vac and manhandled a full-sized dehumidifier into the backseat, rigged up to extension cords to run all night. I went out every couple of hours to empty it, and the next day I parked it in the sun and left all the windows down. After a few days it was dry, so I took it in to have the sunroof repaired. To this day I have no idea why I didn't want anyone to know what happened. It's not as if it were my fault or anything, maybe just that the experience was so weirdly surreal that I couldn't break the spell. You handled that like a boss. My wife and I left our 2 cats home over the weekend. Something spooked them or something, so they thought that each other were foreign intruders. Apparently this included a fight inside the litter box, which had a couple days worth in it. Long story short, both cats were totally covered in crap. Neither had used the litter box since, so there were presents everywhere. They had been sprinting all over the apartment, so everything else was covered in crap, and they would completely freak out and hiss the second they saw one another. All we had to do was get them close enough to recognize each other through their now brown coats of fur, and they were totally chill. Best friends again. The humans on the other hand has days of cleaning to do after that. P.S. These cats are literally best friends that sleep together, clean each other, etc. TLDR. Cat crap everywhere. I wonder if they got stressed over you not coming home as per regular. Cats do weird things when stressed. Got off work about 7 AM. Rounded the corner with my McDonald's breakfast in hand to see 2 cops standing over a dead body on my welcome mat. Mom was puking. I entered the bathroom to help her. She stood up, walked out the bathroom and said, "It's time." Packed her things with dad's help and left to the hospital. She was a doctor and she stayed at the hospital her last month of life. She had lung cancer. She said she was okay after ending her treatment 6 months before. She was lying, but at least she preserved my innocence for a while. Life has never been the same. I came home at 1 AM or so and the front porch was covered in blood. Neighbor's dog was scared of the fireworks and came over to our porch to hide where our 16-year dog was. They'd fought in the past, but this time he couldn't hold his own and the other dog ripped some of his guts out and he was standing in the grass shaking. Died 2 days later, after stitched him up and seemed to be getting better, but nope. That dog was tough as nails and sweet as can be. R.I.P. Butch. My ex-GF is a mean drunk. The closest I've seen to a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde type transition. The verbal and physical abuse was the worst I'd ever experienced. One night I can see she's starting to transition. I do my best not to engage her. Doesn't matter at all, and the fact that I'm pretty much ignoring her makes it worse. She starts to hurl insults, then hurl objects. She throws a TV remote at my face and breaks my nose. I go to the washroom, stop the bleeding, then leave our apartment because I just couldn't take anymore. I come back around 5:30 AM. Our apartment is completely destroyed. She went into a rage because I left. The garbage can and everything inside was smashed against the walls. Table and chairs overturned. Broken glass and plates everywhere. Framed pictures ruined. Basically everything in the living room was fricked. I find her in the bedroom passed out on the bed covered in her own pee. I thought to myself, welp, this is the end of this crap right fricking now. I broke up with her and she was very surprised because she thought we were doing just fine. I think it would be coming home after working from 8 AM 11 PM in college, walking in completely exhausted from the weekend and hoping to crash before your 8 AM class, only to find that there is a massive party going on in your house. Also, when you finally get to your room there are strangers in your room smoking. This might not seem that bad to others, but I got home at midnight after hanging out with friends at a local restaurant, and I walk in my house to see my then 2-year-old sister. I live with my parents still, standing in complete darkness, the only light being a dang red Christmas light. I screamed and wound up waking my mother. Apparently my very young sister might be a sleepwalker. One morning when we were leaving for work, my wife noticed that the dog had eaten half a pack of sugarless gum. At the time, we did not know that the sweetener in sugarless gum, xylitol, is dangerous for dogs. We just went to work. We were fortunate in that her health was fine, as xylitol can be deadly. She was okay, but we came home to a ghastly smell in the house. The dog was sitting in 0.5 in 1.3 centimeters deep liquid crap in her crate. She was coated head to toe in it, and was excited to see us and wagging her tail, sending a spray 4 feet 120 centimeters in every direction. It took hours to clean her and the room up, and days to get rid of the smell. I laughed at the mental image even as I was thinking, oh no, poor baby, and she was still happy to see you. My 1-year-old son's empty room after his mother and I split up. We planned on 50/50 custody, but she took everything. I closed the door and didn't open it for the 3 months that I had to live there. I came from a broken home and promised myself I'd never do that to my child. I'd felt like such a failure. Dang. I hope you're doing better now. When I was in college, I went away for a weekend to come home to find that my roommate had attempted to hang a TV on the wall. Guess the first time didn't work because there was a massive hole right next to a TV on the wall. Maggots in the summer. I was at the cottage for a week and had forgotten to throw out the garbage before leaving. They were everywhere. I'll never forget that day. Something happened, and the bottom of my fish tank just split spiderweb while I was in class. When I got home, the entire floor was soaking wet and all of my fish were dead. I was so sad. My family was in the kitchen, where there was a completely somber tone. They were quiet for quite some time and I broke the silence with, "Who died?" They then all told me that they had found a noose in my brother's closet and were trying to figure out what to do about the situation. At that point my brother had basically barricaded himself in his own room. His therapist was called and told the family that if my brother didn't want to be admitted into the hospital, then he would have to be checked on every hour during the night. My brother said it had to be my dad, who had a shift at 5 in the morning, and couldn't be waking up every hour in the night. My dad wanted to take the hinges of the door, but my brother said it would be a huge invasion of privacy. I don't know if he ended up cracking the door, but I'm fairly certain no one checked on him. After learning the oil and gas company shut down after 4 years of my employment, I got home at 10:30 am. Both my neighbor and the leasing office manager were outside, or happened to be outside watching me carry my office desk box. Inquiries were immediate. "Hey, insert name. Why are you home so early? What is in that box?" Then I learned the generator was hit by mean birds and was out of service. That means all the groceries I just bought were sitting in the fridge and I had no job, with the added bonus of no electricity. The power didn't turn on until later the next morning. I knew this was a sign of twists and turns to come, and boy are they. Dead bunny parts and my cat and 2 stranger cats. Years ago we would camp 4 weeks at a time, come a few times a week to do laundry, feed the cats, etc. Our cats had a doggy kitty window and could come and go as they pleased. Came home one night to my cat having guests and serving them bunny. It was a fluffy mess. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.